Hi, everybody. It's Joe Cioffi here on this Sunday night. I'm going to do a short live stream tonight. We'll come back for a chat at the end, even though it says I'm not. So don't go away. I will come back for a little bit at the end. So we saw Tropical Storm Gert form this evening. No surprise. We saw the satellite signature this afternoon was getting better organized. Expansion of convection on the north and northwest side. So it definitely got itself together today. But the outcome is the same. The weather models now also focusing on this weather system, this tropical wave that's moved off the African coast, and even the European seems to have joined in the party to some degree. So we'll talk about that. Models kind of have different ideas in terms of how the ridge across the Atlantic is going to be structured, and I think that's going to ultimately determine which way this thing is going to go. And we'll take a look at the chances for some cloud cover for the eclipse, give you a look at what the GFS did for next Monday afternoon at 2 o'clock Eastern time. And looks like the eastern part of the United States, there are going to be cloud issues in some places, and the west of the Mississippi. Definitely a better chance that you could see some clear skies. So did a little fishing late this afternoon and this evening. Had some interest, some nibbles, but no takers. So as always, it's like in baseball. It's an exercise in failure most of the time. And if you're successful 30% of the time in baseball, you're pretty good. If you're successful a third of the time or more, you're very good. But that's just the nature of the beast. Okay, hang on 1 second. We're going to switch over, and we'll be back at the end for a little talk. Let's start tonight by looking at the tropics. We have Tropical Storm Gert sitting northeast of the Bahamas, and it was upgraded to a tropical storm late this afternoon. You can see it here, a pretty well-defined system, banding showing up in the cloud structure. Looks like a pretty solid core of convection near where the circulation center is. We saw during the day today how the thunderstorm activity began to increase along the in the north and northwest side of this, and that has remained the case during this evening. Also looks like it at least temporarily may not be moving very much, and this could be because it's beginning to change direction from going north-northwest to north and then north-northeast. Sometimes these tropical systems could slow down and stall very briefly while they're in the process of making their turn, and I think that's what's happening here with regards to Tropical Storm Gert. And here's the wider view, and you notice the clouds here along the Carolinas with the old cold front. They're turning and moving southwestward, the periphery of those clouds, and then these clouds here up to the north are moving to the northeast. So Gert is getting caught up in the flow that's along the east coast. There is no surprise here with regards to that. Now we have this complex system that's out in the tropical Atlantic. We have a tropical wave. Looks like there's two pieces to it. There's one that's run out ahead. There's another one that's to its east, so it's sort of elongated east-west. And there's also, at least it was evident earlier, of some kind of swirl of clouds to the north. So this whole complex here is going to eventually try to consolidate into one system, which is what most of the models are doing. And they all, during to this afternoon, to continue to show a bullish setup for the development of another tropical depression or tropical storm during this week. We'll see how that exactly is going to play out. But by that time, Gert will be long gone as it turns north and northeastward. Might kick up the ocean a little bit once it passes by to the east of the Mid-Atlantic and the northeastern part of the United States. But that's really about it as far as that goes. And here's the water vapor imagery. Still here. There we go. Let me see if we can. Yeah. Okay. Good. So we got that fixed. All right. We're still having these dry air issues, and here's all that dry air. Covers a large portion of the tropics to the north and west of this tropical wave. So we'll have to see. There were signs overall that this area of dry air is going to shrink. I would expect that it would if we're going to have some kind of tropical storm development. But we've been led down this road before, and in the meantime, there's a little bit of dry air to the north of tropical storm Gert, but it's not, at least for now, really not impeding development. I would expect this to strengthen a little bit more, maybe get up to about 50 or 55 knots. That's what the Hurricane Center is indicating, and I think that I can pretty well go along with that idea as it moves north and northeast. The water temperatures here are pretty warm. They're on the order of about 84, 85 degrees, so that should be certainly supportive of a strong tropical storm. And with regards to the next wave, we've got still only we have 4 hurricane weather models that were run, and they all basically take it on a track west-northwest over the next 5 to 7 days, which, at least by these models anyway, they go north of the islands. But not all the models take it north of the islands. I'm going to start with the European, and we'll set it up from the initial view. Let me just raise it here so you can see it. So there's Gert. This is the elongated low pressure area that's out in the tropical Atlantic. And actually, the European somehow gets 2 lows out of this. Here's one and here's another. And as we go forward, it actually maintains them as 2 separate identities, one that goes to the northeast of the other one. The lead system actually tracks to the west and crosses the southern Leeward Islands into the eastern Caribbean, where it carries it along as a tropical storm and then moves it over the Dominican Republic, bringing it out the other side. And then it looks like it starts to strengthen it once it gets west of the Bahamas into the Florida Keys. Now, assuming that is correct, which we don't know. Again, long-range model speculation. Sometimes, most of the time isn't really worth the paper it's printed on. But the overall key to the forecast going forward is going to be this ridge that is basically running south of 40 degrees north, sitting out in the Atlantic. And how strong is that ridge? And there's a bit of a weakness, at least indicated by the European. That weakness is inland of the southeast coast. There's another ridge out in the west that extends into the western Gulf states. So going forward, that is really going to tell the story in terms of the overall track. The GFS has weaker ridging going forward as we look at the long range. It has that ridge, but it's got a weakness off the southeast coast of the United States, assuming that we actually have something to worry about when we get there. But that's the main difference. How strong is this ridge going to be that's going to be across the Atlantic and across the Gulf states? Because the stronger that ridge is, the more westerly the component of motion. Both models agree that the northern part of the jet stream is going to be shifting northward up north of 40 degrees north into Canada. There is the Europeans' view, and here is the GFS's view. So they're a little different in how they handle the next round of troughing that comes out of Canada, but the basic premise of the ridge of the jet stream pulling up in Canada is that Canada is there on both models. And let's throw the Canadian in. The Canadian's different. The Canadian actually has a trough in the east and westerlies down to about Virginia. It has this weakness here, but it seems to indicate that it wants to take it far enough west before it gets into the weakness and starts tracking a little bit more to the north. So bottom line, again, through all of this is the fact that we've got to see if anything develops out of this first before we get all worked up about anything at all. A lot to speculate on going forward with regards to the tropical outlook. And I'm going to go to the U.S. view because I'm going to keep this one a little short tonight, folks. It's been a long day. So, why don't we look at the prospects for the eclipse? Well, let's take you forward for the weather for the week. Okay, because here's Gert, We've got generally higher pressures into the eastern states, but there's no, it'll be very warm, but it won't be hot. Gert goes out and goodbye. You can see it passing midway between the Carolinas and Bermuda. The next real chance for any showers or storms probably comes on Friday with the next warm front, cold front combination, and then that goes through. And now you see how the GFS wants to bring that next tropical system. On this run, it was east of the Bahamas, and then it kind of tried to meander it off the southeast coast of the U.S. As far as the eclipse is concerned, we are, of course, the main concern is going to be for cloud cover. And it could all you really need is one cloud, and you're waiting almost 40 years to see an eclipse will get ruined. Now, if you look at Monday, I think the best chances for absolutely clear skies will probably be just inland of the Southern California coast throughout much of the western part of the United States, barring any monsoonal showers and thunderstorms. I think most of that area is going to wind up being clear. Anywhere east of here, except for, there'll be pockets of clear skies perhaps, and that's going to change. But you're going to have cloud cover issues throughout much of the east, I believe, and also I'm trying to write cloudy here. But you're going to have cloud cover issues throughout a good portion of the east, down to Florida and into the central Gulf states. It's probably a good chance that it'll be clear across much of Texas through all of this. So, what, I'm just going to redraw this map just to make so this way it makes a little more sense. Okay, so, let's say that this is the best chances really for clear skies will be in this area. And, maybe you'll have a shot for clear skies up in here. But everywhere else, I think you're going to have the prospect that there could be some clouds, and let alone some scattered showers and thunderstorms. All right, so folks, let's go ahead and end it right here. I just wanted to update you on the tropics and what the models did this afternoon. We'll get back to all of this on Monday. In the meantime, you can check out all the website posts on meteorologistjoecioffi.com, Angry Ben on nycweathernow.com. And thank you, Trop, for Levi Cowan for tropicaltidbits.com, great weather website that we use, and I just want to give him a lot of credit. You should use his website and take a look. He's got all the maps and tropical storms and hurricanes all on one page, all the models, all there in one place. Tropicaltidbits.com. Everybody have a great rest of your evening. We will talk to you on Monday. All right, mic's back on. Okay, I'm just a little subdued. I'm kind of tired tonight. Well, by the way, I just want to say, because I already saw this come up in the chat, this is something that really drives me crazy. All right, so I just want to let you know. Pandas, hold your thought for 1 second. There's a tendency every time there's any kind of tropical storm or hurricane, the name Sandy is evoked, and I understand why, but you have to meteorologically treat each system differently. The upper air is different, the surface setup is different, everything is different. Okay, nothing is the same, and over time, Sandy, events like Sandy in terms of the upper air and how it's set up, that was a generational thing. You're going to see something like that once every 20, 25 years. That's not to say that you can't have another hurricane, but you certainly can, and you could certainly have a major hurricane. But I would probably say that if we do, it will evolve differently than the way Sandy did. So it's kind of, unfair is not the right word, but it's probably to try to make that connection with every storm you're going to see on every model run. It just doesn't work. You're just, and it doesn't, by the way, it doesn't make you, it's not good if you're a young forecaster to get wrapped up in that sort of stuff, because it just doesn't work that way. All right, Tyler just now told us that the 11 o'clock advisory is up, so let me see if I can punch it up here separately. And, I mean, Just going to tell us pretty much what we already know with respect to Tropical Storm Gert. And just waiting for that page to load. Okay, here we go. They did up the wind by 5 miles an hour to 45 miles an hour, moving north-northwest at 9, 28.8, 71.9. And the Hurricane Center the Hurricane Center takes this to minimal hurricane, believe it or not. They strengthen it to 65 knots when it gets out to 36 and 68.5. Let me see the reasoning. Almost all of the historically reliable guidance now show Gert becoming a hurricane in a couple of days under moderately favorable conditions, light wind shear, warm water temperatures, etc., etc. Okay, some of the intensity models did do that over the last few days, so I suppose, and certainly it's not impossible that could happen. It wouldn't be a huge shock if we wound up seeing Gert become a hurricane. So that would also lend to the argument that it would probably kick up the surf a bit more when it passes east of the Mid-Atlantic states and the Northeast. Okay. Yes, Delvin is correct. Invoking Sandy really is kind of like the concept of a broken clock being right twice a day. Eventually something similar is going to happen, but yeah, when 20 years from now, 50 years from now, try and remember that each one is different. The odds of having an identical setup with a system going into to central New Jersey near Toms River is huge. I mean, just the odds are very, very long. And you can have a storm similar to Sandy, and if it goes inland over central Long Island or New York Harbor or Cape May or into toward Nantucket and southeastern New England, it's a whole different scenario. Marlon Reed, could 91L, that's the system that's now off the African coast, become a problem in the Caribbean? Well, the European would suggest that the track of this may be further south and further west. I don't think that's unreasonable given what we've seen so far this tropical season. There's been, you've had 2 unusual tropical storms come in pretty far to the south, so to have a third one would not be a surprise to me. So I think right now the idea that something is going to go north of the Leeward Islands is not a certainty. I have to leave the door open because of what the European did today. Okay. How is the ridge in the U.S., Delvin, in the upper air going to interact with 91L? How is the ridge in the U.S. in the upper air going to interact with 91L if it drifts slightly north? Okay. I'm not sure which ridge you're referring to. If you're referring to the ridge, that builds, I'm sorry about that. I'm just really tired. That builds from the central Gulf states, from the western Gulf states, all the way across the Atlantic. It's a narrow ridge, and the European has it, it's this sort of, this elongated east-west ridge, and it's pretty strong, but it's very narrow. Whereas the GFS kind of has that big weakness in the middle that we're going to have to pay attention to. So how the ridge builds, how strong it gets, the jet stream in Canada, does it pull far enough north? Those are all big questions in terms of how the track is going. And Tyler Knapp, you're watching snow in Alaska now. Good. That's a good sign. Last time I looked at Barrow about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I think they were in the mid-70s up there, some ridiculous temperatures that were all along the north coast of Alaska. So I imagine that is not the case now. Let's see. Pandez, what is your opinion? Oh, that reminds me too. I'm sorry. I want to come back to somebody else. Pandez, hold on a second. My opinion on the new invest with more to come off Africa, not Alaska. Okay. That system actually looks pretty interesting, and it does look somewhat impressive. I'm still concerned with respect to the dry air that's to the north, because I think that could impede it. It could be the reason why the GFS develops it so quickly, and the other models take a little longer to get it going. Oh, I'm sorry. I was coming back to you too, by the way, Panda, as you mentioned about fishing in Lake Erie today, and you got skunked. Well, you know what? You weren't alone. I'm going to be going up to Lake Ontario in about less than 6 weeks for 9 days to do some salmon fishing and maybe some trout. So who knows? If this fishing is terrible, I might take a drive west. Okay, so bear that in mind. Does Joe Cioffi want to talk to me? Raymond, what's the matter? Did I ignore you? Raymond's all worked up because he's excited because Albany, National Weather Service Albany has been talking about, mentions about the possibility of some rogue severe thunderstorms on Tuesday, which I suppose is possible with what's going on. To be honest and fair, I didn't really give the short range a deep look this evening. So you kind of have me at an advantage. I looked at my local area and I was looking at the tropics, and my brain is fried now at this point. So I didn't want to really look at anything else. What caused so much of this summer to be in a trough pattern? Frank Sorolla asked that question. Welcome, Frank. This is the first time I've seen you on the chat. Thanks for joining and for asking. Well, the scope of the whole upper atmosphere in terms of where things were setting up, you have to look at the jet stream pattern going all across the northern part of the world. And I'm just trying to recall with the axis that were going on, I believe, in the Pacific up in Alaska with the setup there causes, ridging to develop in the western part of the United States. You have troughing that shows up in the Gulf of Alaska, so you get a ridge in the west, and that creates a trough in the east. And it's been very persistent for the last 2.5, almost 3 months. And until I see solid signs of that overall pattern changing, even though models from time to time want to kind of try to make a change, even when we've had changes, they've been very brief. They've only been for 3 or 4 day spurts, and those have been the three, let's call them the 3 heat waves that occurred over the northern mid-Atlantic and the Northeast, and that's been it. So some years you get that. Some years you get a tendency for troughing in the east. Some years you get a tendency for ridging in the east. Last August, it was very warm in the east. It was certainly very warm in the New York area. We had, I think, the temperature averaged almost 4.5 degrees above normal. We're not doing that this August, at least the way we've been going so far. Raymond works outside his last week at the pool. Yeah, I'm still trying to get my pool to clear, let alone I've been in it once because I had a horrible algae problem, which I finally got to clear up, and it was clear for 2 whole days. And then the algae came back, so I'm starting from scratch all over again. And I'm going to be closing my pool in about 3 weeks anyway, because around here, once you get to Labor Day, you're done. Tyler, I guess you meant Iceland as far as snow is concerned. Okay, I'm not paying attention to weather in Iceland, or in Greenland right now. But just on that point, because of there was press about the fact that in Greenland we had a record cold July, and I believe the coldest temperature ever recorded in the month of July in the northern hemisphere was recorded in Greenland at some mountain 10,000 feet up. It was 33 degrees below zero. It's been a very cold summer up there, and I'm just speculating, wondering what does that mean for us, for the Northeast, particularly when Greenland blocking sets up, if it does. Does that have any kind of impact? I don't know. That's a big long range question. I'm not a long range guy, but that's a big long range question. 99 Wolves, isn't it going to be extra tropical when it makes landfall in Iceland? Okay, who's making landfall in Iceland? Are we talking about Gert here? You guys are looking at Iceland? Reykjavik? Yeah, by the time it gets up that way, yeah, Actually, now I'm recalling from when I looked at the GFS earlier, it does eventually take a deep, makes it a deep low in the North Atlantic. Yeah, it'll be extratropical at that point, or in the transition therein. Not always the case. What, closing the pool early in Albany, 90 degrees in September. Oh yeah, I mean it's actually even been 100 down here in early September. I think the record high for New York City is somewhere around 100 for them, or 101 for a September day. I'm not 100% sure. Okay, if the jet stream stayed as it was now for the winter, how bad would Ohio's winter be? Well, it certainly would be colder than the last two. It's not just the troughing in the east would be cold for Ohio. Now, whether it would be snowing or not would depend on other factors. And the subtropical jet, the southern part of the jet stream, and how that sets up blocking, and if that sets up the trough in the east, certainly would be an indicator of the fact that we would, you'd have a colder than at least an average winter. Okay, maybe a colder than average winter, but let's get there, please. And Jason Schaefer says Alaska is about to get snow also. Okay, thank you, Jason. Jason works with me from time to time, or actually I work with Jason from time to time, or both ways are correct, at the WPIX TV in New York, which, by the way, I will be on this coming Saturday, the 19th, on WPIX TV at 5 o'clock and at 10 o'clock. So if you're in the New York area, or if you just go to pix11.com, you can watch me there. That's next Saturday night. Actually, I do, Pandas, I actually do know someone named Gert, just so you know. Actually, there were several. I've known several. And tips on how to catch fish. I'm probably the wrong person to come to with that, especially the last couple of times I've gone out. All right, look, folks, I am feeling my voice disappear. Okay, so I think we're going to call it a night, and it's coming up on the 11 o'clock hour anyway. So let's check back in tomorrow. I'm back to regular work schedule for me this week, folks. So in terms of live streams, I'll probably do one tomorrow before noon, but I'm not exactly sure what time. I'm gonna, let's say, shoot for 11 a.m. How's that? And probably shoot for 11 a.m. every day this week. But I'm only going to be able to do one live stream a day during the weekdays. If I can squeeze a second one, it would not be until midnight when I'm back home from my job at Fios One News. And you can go to fios1news.com website, and you can watch me there as well if you want to see me do television. All right, so look, let's leave it at that. Thank you very much for joining me tonight. As always, I really enjoy doing these chats, and we will talk to you tomorrow, and we'll see what the overnight weather models what they do. With all of a sudden, we've got a couple. Gert is going to do what it's going to do, but if the European is right, we're going to have at least may have a couple of tropical systems to be talking about over the next week to 10 days. All right. Have a great evening, folks. We'll talk to you tomorrow.